Yeah,
Sure.
That's
More
it. I can see your,
vaccinated.
you see your mouth, otherwise.
I agree.
Yeah, thanks.
Can you close it? Okay. Wait a
Is it
second.
silent?
Yeah, I think I'll do it. Wait for us for this one.
No.
We can make it.
He will come
Yeah,
for this time.
absolutely.
Unfortunately, I've got to be in Tigerberg at all the way on the other side of the city, so
And traffic is
that's
terrible.
no, the traffic's fine now, but anyway, let's begin.
Sure.
We started a prayer and then we asked Almighty to bless the occasion and also to give us foresight and be able to see things ahead and to have the wisdom to be able to lead with example, by example, and also to accept whatever's come from you in good faith. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا حبيبنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين الحمد لله رب العالمين. We start with the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. All praise be to God, all graciousness be to God. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, most gracious, most merciful. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. He is the Lord of Day of Judgment. He do we worship alone. We ask for assistance and help. Guide us in straight path. Father, those whom you have blessed. غير المغضوب عليهم من الضالين آمين. Not the path of those who incur your wrath and your displeasure, but the path of those whom you have favored. والضالين آمين. Not of those who come astray. آمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
So, on behalf of the committee of this mosque and the patrons who frequent this mosque, we welcome you.
Thank you.
We appreciate your presence here. We know you must have a near impossible schedule to follow. And but that just shows us that you are here to try and find a meaningful solution. And that you're not dismissive of our needs. So these are the committee members. I'll just quickly introduce some of them. This is Brother Anwar Umar, and that is our Imam. He's not a committee member. He's tasked with all matters religious. That is the Southern Khalfan, and that is Abdullah January. He's our trustee. Muhammad Rajab. He's the young blood on the team. Thabit Rajab is in charge of infrastructure improvements. And that's Sadiq Kamaldeen, our secretary, assistant secretary, and that's one of the old stalwarts there.
Mr. Trustee.
One of the old trustees, you know. So we've been around since 1906. That's when this mosque was created. We've been here for a protracted period of time, and of course, in similar vein, the call to prayers have been emanating from within the confines of these four walls, also for a protracted period of time. Without incident or sanction. And so naturally you can imagine that our caretaker, the person that reserved your spot over there, was taken aback when being presented by the notice by one of the city officials. He in turn relayed that to us, and that is why we were here. We deliberated on it, and of course brought it to your attention, and you reciprocated, and that is why you're here. So for the meeting, we're handing the floor over to you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being available to see me. When I said to Aslam on Friday, I think it was, that I would like to meet with you. I think we tried originally for, was it early Saturday morning? Yeah, and that wasn't possible. But I appreciate that you have made time at very short notice, within a matter of days, to see me. And I just want to say that when this was raised with me as an issue last year, about a year ago exactly now, I started looking into the issue and trying to understand the technicalities, and made a decision in my mind that when I was elected mayor, or if I was elected mayor rather, this was when the campaign was still just starting, that I would address this properly. When I got elected in November and was sworn in on the 18th, I asked our team in our policy unit, an excellent young man called Piwe, to draw up two options for me, or a range of options, as many as he wanted to present to me, on how we could deal with this properly. And in early January, he came back to me, Piwe did, with two options. The first of which was a full amendment to a bylaw. And the trouble with that option, the biggest trouble with that option, is that it would take at least 2 years, because you've got to go through a very rigorous public participation process. There would be a draft, public participation on the draft, then a second draft, then public participation on that draft, then a final version, and so on. And it would generate a whole massive amount of public debate from people who think that actually you shouldn't have this right. And, you know, I'm afraid whether we like it or not, and we don't like it, there are those people. There are those people. And so the second option that PWE presented was, well, you can basically issue an instruction as the mayor. You have that legal power to say this is how officials will interpret our rules. And that instruction is called a standard operating procedure, and it's issued in my name and in the name of the city manager. And it goes out immediately to the entire organization, and it says, from now on, you will implement our rules in the following way. And so that was obviously much more attractive to me. There's no need for public consultation, there's no appeals process, there's none of that. It can happen instantly. And so I said, right, PWE, go away, draft the SOP, let me look at it. He did a great job, I think. We toed and froed a little bit, we amended and edited and got lawyers to look at it. And by the time that April came along, we were reasonably happy with it. We issued it to the organization. And then I thought to myself, I felt very proud of myself, because I thought this issue is now dealt with once and for all. We can tick it off the list and move on. And I said to my wife, it is so funny how someone who you have never met, who you do not know, can really put a big spanner in the works. And so there is this official who has sent you this letter without my knowledge, without any consultation, and so on. So, you know, what I wanted to come and say is that the letter was issued to you on the basis of a public complaint. I'm trying to find out still actually who was the complainant. I don't know if you know. I don't know either. Our very late friend.
Welcome. Nice to see you again.
Are you well? Good, have a seat. I'm just going through the background, Aslam.
Yeah.
I'm only joking, you're not late. We started early, yeah. I'm still trying to find out who the complainant was. I was hoping to have that information by the time we came here now, but I don't have it. And a very well-meaning lady, I'm sure that she means no harm. She's just unaware or improperly trained on how to deal with the standard operating procedure as it relates to complaints against places of worship. So what we have said now is that what I like about the complaint is that it's likely that the complaint went to our call center. Members of the public would not know to complain to our environmental health practitioners. They would usually just call the call center, or they would call the police directly, and the police would refer them to law enforcement. What I like actually about the complaint is that law enforcement did not respond. So they have got the message. Law enforcement didn't respond to it. It was an environmental health practitioner who responded to it. So what we've got to go and do is make sure that it's a big organization, there's 33,000 staff members. We can't, I think our mistake was assuming that everyone gets the message immediately. That's not how it works. We've got to go back and train our officials in the way that it's supposed to work in terms of the standard operating procedure, and make sure that letters like that don't go out in the future, and that when we receive complaints, that we have a standard response to those complainants and to you that lets you know that we have received the complaint, but not in the way that you have been informed now, and not in a way that kind of peremptorily, in the way that letter says, almost instructs you to stop doing it, which is really unhelpful. So So in a way, I'm deeply annoyed by what has happened. I'm also strangely grateful for it because it shows us what we've got to do now to fix the system, and that it actually isn't enough to just send out a document to the organization. You've got to do a whole lot of follow-up work, which we will now do as a result of this complaint. And at the same time, we want to make sure that you have a mutually beneficial relationship of neighbors, a healthy relationship with your neighbors. So I think it would be helpful if the complainant is willing to just have a conversation with them to say, this is a 106-year-old practice. It's part of what the city of Cape Town is. It's part of what makes the city so wonderful. It's not going anywhere. How do we live together more beneficially as neighbors with one another? And that's what I'd like the communication to you as mosque leadership in the future to be, to say, instead of this kind of grumpy letter that says stop doing this immediately, rather we just want to let you know there's no enforcement taking place. We want to let you know that we've received this complaint. We'll reach out to the complainant to ask whether we can share his or her details, and then we leave it up to you as the mosque leadership to connect with that person. A city staff member can always attend that meeting if you'd like, to to be good fellow residents to one another of this city. So that is where we are at. So I wanted to come and tell you personally that we are dealing with it. I will personally make sure and probably attend myself the training session that we do. I'm sorry that you got the letter that you did. It's not in terms of the new standard operating procedure that we've written, and letters like that won't go out in the future.
Is the SOP intended to be an interim measure, or is that going to be there to as a permanent fixture?
So it's there as a permanent fixture.
Okay. We, just as a point of departure, we are interacting with you in good faith.
Yes.
We are an underlying movement here. We do not subscribe to any organization or any umbrella body. We have deliberately thwarted attempts on the part of others who have tried to politicize this thing, weaponize this thing.
Sure.
So that is the point of departure. We are concerned with the standard operating procedures. The notice in itself is flawed. It doesn't give us a right of reply. It's just
You should disregard the notice.
we have tasked Mr. Anwar with our response there too. He is the person that will tabulate our position here. I'm not just explaining what our sentiments are.
Thanks, Maria, for that background. We were actually quite shocked when we received the letter. I was here with Shafiq, and we all were under the impression that, as you said, things are done and dusted.
Yes. I was under the same impression.
Further than that, we thought that all places of worship are exempted from these, complaints. And as a result of this complaint, we had to dig into, the regulations. And you've given us some background there as well. And I think it's quite important, the question that Zahir asked, whether this is an interim measure or whether it's a permanent measure, because you did articulate that there were two options: changing the bylaw, which will take time and public participation, and it's a rigorous process, and then a quicker response where you have the right to issue an instruction in terms of how to deal with it. We as an institution have a specific position regarding this, and that's what we want to convey to you. We feel that the standard operating procedure doesn't do enough. It doesn't exempt places of worship. In fact, if you read it in terms, and you have probably several times, so you should be aware, clause 5.2.3 explicitly says that the city still have the right to invoke the bylaw. So the bylaw is very much in place, and you can read it. 5.2.3, so the bylaw is very much in place as it is. you know, it's just a circular kind of, articulation that this is how we deal with it, but if we want to, we can still invoke the bylaw. It's pretty obvious, Having said that, and I know, you mentioned that there will be people that comment on it if we go through a public participation process that would object to, being exempted. We feel that, as law-abiding citizens, and we hope that most South Africans are, and most South Africans are, wanting to build a better nation, we feel that the rigorous process of going through, a public participation process will show where the nation stands on this. And we are confident that that will fall on the right side of justice. Yeah. So we would really encourage you to rethink that and try and, this could work as an interim measure, because it's a quick fix. That's basically what you try to do. But it doesn't do enough. And then go through the public participation process and deal with it properly and appropriately as it should be done. And if the chips fall that the citizens feel that it shouldn't happen, then you are absolved of it anyway, because it's not you. It's not personalized. This is you doing something that is a half measure, and it doesn't make the cut in our view. We feel that the bylaw should be changed, and we feel that we have the sentiments of the nation on our side. Most South Africans will support it, or Pectonians, or people in the city will support it. We don't have any doubt, and we don't have any hesitation in terms of encouraging you to follow that route. We think that it really will come out with a just solution, and a better solution for you personally, in that you'll be protected because it's not your call, right? But this is your call. You made this call, and unfortunately, having said what you said, we don't think that it's a training issue. It's a legal issue that needs to be resolved.
Okay, Mr. Omar, I think with respect, you are misreading the document. Section 5 deals with the standard procedure in respect of any noise complaint made to the city during office hours. That is related to other complaints. Section 6 is the standard procedure for dealing with specific types of noise complaints. 6.1 refers to places of worship. 6.1 reads as follows. Only in terms of, so these complaints must be investigated only in terms of the Western Cape noise control regulations, and not as a noise nuisance in terms of Section 3 of the city's public places and the prevention of noise nuisance bylaw. So it makes it relatively clear to me. That's why I was quite surprised when you read that clause, because I didn't remember that in relation to places of worship at all. Places of worship are exempt from the application of the bylaw. In terms of 6.1.1, that makes it really clear in my reading that you are exempt.
Read further.
Yeah.
Read further. It then goes further to say 5.2 is how you deal with it, and 5.2.3 says if you want to, you can invoke the bylaw. So it's kind of a circular articulation of the regulation. In clause 6, it says that 5.2 is how you deal with it, right? Yeah. And
but that is not in terms of the bylaw.
No,
that's in terms of the
it says don't deal with it in terms of the bylaw. It does say, I agree with you.
Yes.
It says it don't deal with it in terms of 5.2, but then 5.2.3 says you can invoke the bylaw.
So let me explain why that was.
But you understand where I'm coming from?
I understand, but it is absolutely our intention, and I believe that is what it says, that you are exempt from the bylaw. What it does also say is that the Western Cape noise regulations still apply from the provincial government. The reason that we had to do that is because, and I hope that all reasonable people would agree with us on this, is that there are some valid complaints. And those valid complaints are only those which exceed the objectively measurable decibel limit for healthy sound levels. And that is objectively measurable. There will be a Western Cape, environmental practitioner who comes with a little decibel measurer and measures the decibels of the sound. And I think the limit is 7 point something decibels, above which level you are, it's kind of ear splitting. Now, there are some valid complaints like that. We have got complaints, and I must say probably 90% of our complaints are actually about churches, not about mosques. There are some complaints about churches which set up on the sides of roads, in tents, in communities, on public fields. They bring enormous sound systems, sometimes mounted on trucks, and they blow the neighborhood away, and then they pack up at the end of the day and they go. And that is not a correctly zoned place, so they're not covered by the exemption that we
And
have.
that was going to be our other question.
Yeah.
Because it's not defined in there. What is a correctly zoned place of worship?
This facility is zoned as a place of worship, so that means the exemption applies. But we had to come up, the knife edge that we had to walk is, how do we make sure that you guys are protected, but still allowing for valid complaints? And I know that our political opponents are saying, no, there's no such thing as a valid complaint. But I'm sorry, if that's going to be the disagreement, then I just disagree. There are valid complaints. I always use this example. A few years ago, I used to work in an office on St. George's Mall, which we all know. And there was a guy that used to come there. In Christianity, we call them turn or burn preachers. Do you have turn or burn preachers? I suspect not. There was a guy that used to come there with his little wheelie sound system, speaker with a microphone, and he used to just stand there and shout at people and say, if you don't turn to Jesus now, you're going to hell, you're going to burn. And he would just shout at people all day. And eventually law enforcement had to remove him. Now, is that an infringement of religious freedom? I don't think so. That is a valid complaint. You cannot just go and assault people in a public open space with your sound system on the basis of religious freedom. So what the knife edge that we had to walk is, how do you achieve an exemption for places of worship like yourselves, but also not offer a blanket exemption for every single person on the basis of religious freedom? And you can say that we've achieved that balance incorrectly, but we've tried to do the best that we can to achieve that balance.
And we agree with you. There could be valid complaints.
Yeah.
However, is there no way of dealing with it in terms of amending the bylaw rather than having SOP?
Oh, certainly, there might be a way of dealing with
Absolutely. And that's what we want to encourage you to do. We can live with this as an interim measure.
Yeah.
We understand why you had to do this, to have a quick fix in order to resolve a burning issue immediately.
Yes.
However, that doesn't stop you from going the rigorous process. Go with full blown public participation and come out with a more robust legislation that everyone agreed to, right? And everyone has participated in it. Because now, no one participated in this. It's your call, right? And in our view, that's very undemocratic. Firstly,
Well, explain why I thought it was
no,
necessary.
and we understand why it was necessary, but it's a flawed process, and it should be an interim process. It's your personal position that you've put on the table, and that's why you're taking so much flack for it. We would encourage you sincerely and deeply to go the robust process and change the bylaw for what it's worth. That's our position, and that's what I've been mandated to convey to you.
I thank you very much for that view. I will consider it. I'm not entirely sure that I agree that it is necessary to amend the bylaw. That's not to say that it's impossible. Of course, we can do it any time. But I think that what you will find is that you will find a bitter and divisive debate in Cape Town over a formal bylaw amendment, with many hundreds of residents coming out holding exactly the opposite view, saying that in fact we should take a much stricter line against any places of worship that make loud noises. And I've got to do what I think is best for the religious community, even if, as in this case, the religious community doesn't even agree that is what's best, because I've got to think of what the response is going to be from the whole of Cape Town. So I will consider that. But in the meantime, I want you to have the assurance that you are exempt from the bylaw, that the letter that you received was not in terms of this procedure, and that we are taking actions to mitigate that happening again.
Mr. Nathan, there was a lot of confusion when he made the statement, in parliamentarians, he said the churches and mosques are exempted, and that's it, it's like the rest. And the community were elected. He said, wow, the mayor's with us. And I was also, I was surprised you also invited to have, take a fast, setting the moon, leadership, all that. Because we recognize that you were standing in terms of, favorable decision making or place of worship. Can you explain why you said that? I mean, that was
Why I said what?
that statement you made to Parliament. And you said churches and mosques are exempted. It is now finished.
Yes.
No more. No more exemption.
Yes.
Even Bible. I must compel this.
Okay, good. Well, as I was just trying to explain to Mr. Omar, that is exactly what we achieved. This procedure exempts places of worship which are properly zoned, which yours is, from the application of the bylaw. It exempts you. And what I didn't foresee is that message wasn't clearly picked up by all of our officials across the city. I'm pleased that it was clearly picked up by law enforcement officials, which deal with the largest number of complaints, but not by everyone, and we are taking action to address that.
Can I just ask one question?
You seem uncomfortable with that.
No,
Please be honest. Please be honest.
It's a lot of confusion out there. Everyone has the impression that the bylaw has not been amended. It's nothing about the SOP. Obviously, being a peace-loving community for so many years, we've never had complaints. Because there were always wonderful interaction with the various, interfaith and people of different religions. Because they knew this call was a call to pray, a call of conscience of God,
Absolutely.
and which we need so much, particularly in our time, when there's so many things happening in the world, where people are now stressed and they're on pressure and anxiety and lockdown, people losing jobs. For us to have a strong faith in prayers, strengthening psychologically also.
I couldn't agree more, sir.
So I don't know if you know the meaning of the Adhan. Do you know the meaning of the Adhan? The call to pray? It's in Arabic.
I mean, I know what it is, but I don't specifically know the meaning now.
It should, because the whole issue is about the Adhan. It's God has created you. Allah. You know that, because even the terrorists know that. But then we declare the one is God.
Yeah.
You believe you're Jewish?
No, I'm not Jewish.
No.
I'm Christian.
One is God, also the prophet. Every call to pray, call to
Yes.
less 12 years, 1,443 years. That's a long time. And the amazing part about this, Mr. Mayor, is that it reverberates all over the world globally. There's not a moment without dance at the go. Because as the clock turns, the times change also for everyone. And look how long that voice has been given all over. Isn't it amazing?
It is.
Isn't it amazing?
It is really amazing. And I'm a person of faith myself, and you, if that is not the assurance that you feel, I want you to feel the assurance that this government in Cape Town absolutely respects, not just respects, deeply respects and appreciates the role that your institution plays, and institutions like yours, not only mosques, but churches and synagogues and temples and so on, and take seriously our responsibility to protect that heritage in Cape Town. So I will not be comfortable with any attempt by anyone in the city to shut down that space, unless, as I said, unless it is one of those genuinely, objectively valid complaints that every reasonable person, I'm sure everyone around this table would agree, there are some of those.
And you'll be here hopefully for the Adhan in a couple of minutes' time, and you'll experience for yourself whether or not that complaint was valid or spurious.
I have no doubt it was spurious.
It's not rocket science.
Yes.
You'll hear it. We'll be sitting here, and you'll be able to assess without any scientific instruments as to whether or not it's at a level higher than what it should be. We've been very meticulous in terms of applying it as low as possible.
Yeah.
Because, we're respectful of our neighbors. We understand, we are in a diverse community, and we've been here for more than 100 years. So, for a complaint like this, and, your colleague, Patricia van der Haas, in one of the interviews, she participated in, she sort of let out some of the details behind the complaint. She basically said this person said that because of the adhan, the person could not function for the whole day. They couldn't do whatever they needed to do for the whole. The adhan takes place for 3 minutes, 5 times a day. 3 minutes, and again, you'll experience it for yourself in a couple of. And I would really encourage you to sit through it and listen to it.
It won't bewitch you.
It's in a few minutes.
Listen, after high school, I visited my mother in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia for 6 weeks.
Oh, wow. Then you had it all. You had it all.
So I've lived I can't say I've lived in Saudi Arabia, but I stayed for an extended period of time there, and I loved it. I loved it.
You must go to Turkey. Have you been to Turkey?
I have, yeah. I've been
Wow,
to Turkey.
really?
So, given what you said, I mean, really, we were.
But look, there's lots of interesting people in Cape Town, Mr. Omar. I've got a German lady who writes to me on a weekly basis complaining about the call to prayer in Burkop. She bought a fancy apartment in Germany. I mean, in the Burkop from Germany just a few years ago. Has obviously never experienced this. Didn't listen before she bought the apartment. Now she's extremely upset. I've got to be able to say to her, as I do, this is not valid. This is just nonsense. That mosque has been there, I think, even longer than this one.
Yes.
So you've got to just get on with your life.
This complaint was really, not valid. And any city official should have been able to,
completely agree.
not only the lowly, clerk, every single one. I mean, if you think about it, 3 minutes a day.
5 times a day.
5 times a day, 1 in the morning, it's now 6:15, 1 at 1 o'clock, 1 at 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock again, and 7:15.
That's it.
And that's it, 3 minutes a day, right? So it's 15 minutes spread over the whole day. I mean, and
It's a non-issue.
crazy. How could we?
It's a total non-issue, and I assure you, my intention was to make it a non-issue. If it remains an issue, then I've got to go back and see how to make it a non-issue.
Until you amend the bylaw, it's going to remain an issue. Given the sentiments, out there, even in your chamber, what has happened there and how it's been dealt with. I listened to the whole thing, right? Because I had to get to grips with the issues. So I know all the sentiments of all the councillors, including yourself. And I went through the bylaws and, the SOP, and that's why, we're not thumb sucking here. Again, this SOP, and you might not read it that way. If I read it this way, someone else will read it that way as well, and someone else might read it some other way. So it doesn't go far enough in terms of exempting places of worship from complaints. It's basically saying this is how we deal with it, but if we show feel, we can still invoke the bylaw. That's what it says.
That is not what it says. That is not
Now,
what it
there's
says.
also something obviously, and a bit further. There's obviously a lot of Islamophobic, like a reaction to many things in terms of worldviews. Islam is in the forefront. Everything we do is negative. Islam, terrorism, bombing, and going on. So people are becoming concerned on that level, and being, Islamophobia is spreading. So people become scared, so, sometimes you think, you're being affected, or that, then sometimes it becomes a religious aspect also. And people don't have that tolerance in terms of, interfaith, how we deal with it. Even that is to be found, besides noise levels, because overall people know this is our religion. But now you're imposing it on me, and I don't like Islam, and all that stuff. So even on that level, I'm involved with people on the Imam level, on the spiritual level. And they would speak about these things, debate on these things and all that. So when I explained to them the meaning of it, which is a bit different, then started to realize it's not just that noise, it is something that's been called over centuries. So it's a belief in God and the concept thereof. So even that is also another issue.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, go for it.
In this regard is, say there should be a change of mayor in Cape Town, or leadership, or a new party comes in.
Yes.
Would that standard operating system still be valid? If
Yes.
the new mayor decides now, doesn't Mr. Gordon Hill made him slip up here, or will they be able to follow that?
Yes, it will be valid until it is revoked. It would have to be formally and explicitly in writing revoked.
By a subsequent mayor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let's see if anyone does that. I assure you they won't, because they will all know that it will raise the wrath of yourselves and the Muslim community, because
But then the longevity of this then stretches only as far as Utah, if we look at it strictly speaking.
yes, but
Someone else
there's
might
no.
not share your sentiments and come and say, look, let's just get rid of the. So many other issues.
That's true of the bylaw as well, by the way.
We
Anyone
don't-
can amend it any time.
Yeah, but
Take
there's
that
a
on board.
rigorous process
Process
with the
there.
bylaw. Yeah, there is a
We
mayor
don't-
can just change this.
We don't see this as an Islamic thing at all.
Yeah.
We view this from a broad perspective. This is not about us at all. That's why it doesn't actually matter to us who the complainant is. That's
Yeah,
Gray's area. That's a side issue.
No, it's not. I don't mean
Yeah.
it in that sense. I just
Yeah.
want you
Yeah,
to have a conversation with
the
the person.
complainant can be a Muslim person.
Yeah.
For that
Yeah,
matter.
I've got complaints like that as well. But
Yes, we mindful
Yeah,
of that as well.
yeah.
So for us, it's, from where we stand, it's a broad issue. It involves places of worship. Whether it's a synagogue, a shul, a temple, an ashram, a mosque, whatever the case may be, that's
Correct.
our point of departure, So
Correct. No, I totally agree with you. And as I say, I actually asked for the statistics of our complaints, and probably 8 or 9 out of 10 complaints are actually about churches and the singing and the rock music and so on. That comes from particularly modern, very charismatic Pentecostal churches.
yeah,
But
we find the church bells soothing though. Something like that.
the lovely, the cathedral bells are beautiful as well. No, I mean, this is such an integral part of what makes
Yeah.
Cape Town so lovely. So it's worth protecting.
No,
Absolutely worth
I mean,
protecting.
a hodgepodge of different kinds of people.
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at
Mark, can I just say that, can we, on that point, which Mr. Omar have some understanding, according to his opinion, at 5.3 or 5.2,
5.2.3.
that there's a bone of contention over there. Can we have, because that, so it's not speaking to point number 6, which deals with the places of worship. How can we go about it just to give you that confidence that what we are saying, that it don't refer to the places of worship? What type of just to clear your conscience that what we are saying.
It's
that
not my
it
conscience.
is
My
the-
conscience doesn't need to be clear. It's clear, But having said that, again, I've been mandated to communicate, to articulate the position of this institution to
Yeah.
you. The position of this institution is, and we've deliberated.
I
about
understand,
this,
so, but I want
the bylaw needs to be changed. This can serve as an interim measure. We understand why it was expedient for the mayor to do this. He explained that, and that's basically what he said. He had to do it immediately, right, to find a solution. But we don't think it goes far enough in terms of exempting places of worship explicitly in terms of the bylaw. So you're always going to have you could have two different legal practitioners have two different views in terms of, this bylaw. I mean, this SOP, in terms of how I've interpreted it, in terms of the mayor, how he's interpreted it, Zahir is a lawyer, how he interpreted it. It's not clear and explicit enough. And we feel that a rigorous process, and many have encouraged the mayor to do so, it's not only us, it's quite a widespread sentiment out there. And to just suppress that sentiment, we don't think it's the way to go. I think you need to surface that sentiment, all the sentiments, in fact, get people to have their say. And we are confident that at the end of the road, we will have a robust, a bylaw being drafted out of that. Even if it takes 2 years. In fact, we've had 2 years. What's your name?
Aslam Kasim.
If this process was followed when it was supposed to have been followed, we would have had a bylaw by now, an amended bylaw. But it wasn't. Right?
2018.
So we back at square one. But let's go through that process. 2 years, The other thing, Aslam, you're from Salt River, I gather, right? We are the elders in this community now, right? We want to transfer a good situation to our kids and their kids and so forth. So 2 years in that time frame is not a lot. We would encourage you guys to go back to the drawing board, dig up the bylaw, look at the options in terms of amending the bylaw explicitly for all places of worship. Like Zayek said, this is not our issue. Yeah, we've kept this quite close because we didn't want to politicize this. Right? There's no other individuals in this room other than people that belongs to this institution. And all of us concur with this position that I'm articulating to you. Right?
Thank you, Mr. Omar. I hear the opinion and I will take it under advisement. But I also want you to feel a sense of comfort that everyone in this government also concurs with the view that you are protected. And if there's something that we can do to make you feel more protected, we will consider that. But you must be assured of our best intentions and faith that you are protected, that your faith and its practices are loved and appreciated in this city community, and that there is no intention from any person, not Aslam, myself, or any person in my executive team, to see those kind of letters go out in future. And if you would like to, Imam or any one of your team, come with me to the training session that I'm going to present, you're also very welcome to do that, to give your perspective as a community mosque in how these complaints are received and the kind of language, the effect that kind of language has on you. And all I can say is that, the city is a big machine. It's a 33,000 person machine. And the lesson that this has taught me is that sometimes the best intentions from the very top of the pyramid take time, more time and effort to filter down. And we have learned that and are doing something about it.
That's it. 13 years.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the complaints now.
just to add to that, Maya, we were not concerned about the complaint in the least, because we know we comply.
I'm glad.
We know we comply, and if it's out of it, we don't have no problem in terms of
Toning it down.
yeah. Well, so the complaint to us was not an issue, right? It's the legislation that's enabling these complaints and how it's articulated in terms of in writing, and that's what we are trying to convey to you. It's not about us. It's not about our institution. It could have been any other mosque. So be that it's ours. And we are taking this position on behalf of all other religious institutions, Muslim and non-Muslim. Yeah. So and we've been very deliberate about that in terms of our interaction and in terms of what we convey.
I appreciate that, Mr. Omar. And if I can just get your email address, then we can also be in correspondence with one another, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, we'll give you the secretary's.
I'll send it to us.
Okay, great.
Excellent. Fantastic.
There you hear it, right?
And that's a 9-year-old youngster, I think.
Then there's 11.
11, yeah. 11.
So that's 3 minutes 5 times a day.
We train him
Yes.
from very young already. He's about 11 of them, get a chance
To do that, yes.
It is the thing and the passion of this future.
Look, I personally live in a community which is just immediately next door to one of the fastest growing Muslim communities in the city. probably the fastest growing. I mean, Panorama is
Yes,
just
Panorama.
it's just
It
booming.
is.
Yeah?
Yeah, it is.
So we are dealing with all of these diversity issues right now, and so taking my mayoral hat off and putting my resident hat on, it's so great to be able to go to a community meeting or answer a nasty comment that I see on Facebook and say, this is protected, we have to respect this, this is a wonderful, beautiful part of our city's cultural fabric.
So I'm glad you were here to witness and experience it.
Well, as I said, I lived in
Yeah,
a state
I
inside
mean, anyone with any sense would have shafted that complaint.
Yeah.
Of course, and that's
Why it was
what-
picked up, it's beyond us. As to
I
why
suspect
even-
I don't know this person. I will meet them soon. But I suspect it's a person just trying to do their job, trying to, they feel like they've received a complaint, they have to do something about it. Unaware of that.
We tend to differ again, so let's give you some background. When Shafiq noted to her, we think we are exempted, she acknowledged that. She actually said, she actually said, yes, we want to deal with it sensitively. Exactly the language coming out of the SOP. So she was aware of the changes, right? And still, it followed through, right? So she was aware that there were changes. As all of us lay people, we, obviously we didn't understand the legalities as deeply as we do now.
Yes.
But she was aware.
Okay.
She was fully aware because Shafiq put it to her.
Well, there's only
Am I right, Shafiq?
yeah. There's only one scenario in which it would remain a valid complaint, and that is if it contravened the decibel limits of the provincial noise regulations. So unless she was coming from that perspective with a decibel counter, there was no valid complaint. There was no valid complaint. So that's the kind of thing we've got to follow up on.
Okay. Again, you've got our position.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for your time and your frank views.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for
Thank you,
coming
meeting.
along to the dinner, the lines.
Not at all. Okay.
Great. Aslam, take a sermon, remember?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Is that why your congregation has dropped so much?